Good afternoon and welcome to the Escambia County Tourist Development Council special meeting. Today is March 13th. It is 3 p.m. Danielle, was this meeting properly advertised?
Yes, through a press release to the public and media.
All right. Whoa. Will you please call the roll?
Ashley Hoffberger,
Present.
James Reeves, Shirley Cronley, David Baer,
Here.
Matish Patel,
Here.
Charles Baer,
Here.
Jennifer Breyer,
Here.
Brad Mullinex,
Here.
and Jason Nicholson.
Here.
Great. We have a quorum, so this meeting is now called to order. Thank you all for being here. First item on the agenda is public forum. We have one person from the audience who has signed up to speak, Ray Palmer. I guess because I didn't list him on the agenda, he wants to come speak to us, give us an update about the SBC.
Am I on the agenda?
No, sir.
Oh, good, thank you. Ray Palmer, 4323 Whiteleaf Court, Pensacola. I just very quickly, love to give a little good news every now and then. I think y'all all are very aware of what we've just gone through, finishing Monday night at the Bay Center as Sunbelt Conference basketball. So I'm just going to run across a few little facts and figures and stuff that's happened in this past week. One of the things we'll start with is some of the community activities that took place impacted. We had an education day that had 600 plus high schoolers from Escambia County come in, and then each of the universities bring their admissions department in, and they do a I don't know what you call it, an opportunity for the high schoolers to meet each of the university's admissions departments, and they get a discount actually if they were interested in that school, and then they stay and play and watch one of the women's basketball games. That's pretty cool. We had a youth day where we had 8 area youth basketball teams go out at halftime and play on the championship court. We had a military night. We had our fan fest. Despite the threat of weather, we gave out about 700 basketballs and T-shirts to the youth of the community. 700 basketballs bouncing around the arena. You can only imagine how much fun that was and what that could have been like. And then another little interesting story is on Monday night, post the game, 2 of our restaurants that we're aware of, one in the north, Bubba's 33, and Sidelines on the Beach, both were reached out to by groups and asked if they would stay open late, and both of them did to accommodate the fans as well as the catering from the teams that they did. It's just great economic impact news. And lastly, I will report that while these numbers are not official, because you'll tell because they're not accurate. I mean, they're accurate, but they're not official. For our women, we had over 10,000 attendees, which is the highest ever in Pensacola and the most since 2013. And for the men's brackets, we had over 20,000, the highest ever in Pensacola also, and the most since 2009. And to that, I give the thank you to Visit Pensacola, because they are the marketing arm of this event, and just wanted y'all to get, a good news on what your investments can do for our community. Thank you. I'll answer any questions, but I don't know that there are any.
Thank you, Ray. Any questions from anyone? No? Well, great job, Ray. And I see Tom. Are you here to speak public forum? Well, go ahead and yes, please just fill out the form when you're done. Thank you. Introduce yourself, please.
All right. Thank you. I was rushing to get here. Tom Jardine, 1112 Vita Luna, and I've come to these meetings a lot in the past. I kind of gave up on it because you guys, I keep saying you guys have failed the citizens in several different metrics. One, the last 3 meetings I went to, 3 consecutive meetings, you guys only had 4 members listen to the citizens. You've been manipulating the public forum back and forth. These meetings only performed at 3 p.m. to begin with. The meeting dates change all the time. I want to say that Mr. Reeves, who I just ran into, at the end of the last meeting, he specifically said that he'd like to manipulate the meetings in such a way to avoid public input. That's outrageous. And I didn't hear one member rebuke Mr. Reeves. That is the smoking gun telling me that the citizens are not getting represented from our tourist industry. We make $23.5 million in bed taxes, and you guys are trying to funnel it all to your advertising agencies like Visit Pensacola. Meanwhile, the citizens are being run over by tourism. We don't have enough money to pay for the sand replenishment project on Pensacola Beach. You guys are essentially giving that project zero money. I know you're going to tell me that you're giving it $500,000 a year, but that was only after your commissioners misappropriated a FEMA grant for Pensacola Beach of $3.355 million. That was in 2021 when that grant was misappropriated. And in response, you guys started giving $500,000 a year to beach replenishment. So right now, you guys are negative $2 million on beach replenishment on Pensacola Beach. And it's obvious that you guys are trying to manipulate things in such a way that you're underfunding the citizens so that you can overfund tourism advertising. We can't pay for the sand replenishment. Our Civic Center, our Bay Center, has languished for years now. We don't have enough money to pay for the Bob Sykes Bridge. We keep getting more and more people over that Bob Sykes Bridge every year, and we don't have a nickel to pay for that bridge. I don't think the T.O. Bars Bridge has any money. I know that money doesn't come from the TDC, but what I'm saying is that tourism is not paying, for itself. Every citizen who comes over that bridge to Pensacola Beach is putting one more burden on our infrastructure and on our environment. And you guys aren't putting any money into our environment, and you're not putting any money into our infrastructure. I think every extra tourist that we get, I look at as a negative thing, because I think the citizens are being ripped off by our tourism industry. So every additional citizen is just one more burden that the citizens are having to pay for. And you guys are responsible for the tourism industry. And our county commissioners have failed the citizens. You guys are supposed to be the governing body. I don't think one member on the TDC has been representing the citizens. As example, Mr. Reeves said that he wants to manipulate public forum in such a way to avoid citizen input, and not one of you members rebuked Reeves. Mr. Reeves and Mr. Patel both let their appointments expire last year, and they kept coming to meetings and voting anyway. Mr. Reeves' appointment had expired for 6 months, but he kept coming to meetings, kept voting. I don't think you guys had a quorum last February or last April at your meetings. You only had 4 active members on that council at both your February and your April meetings. That's enough. It's just that you guys are, just every metric, I think the citizens are being run over by our tourism industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Mr. Reeves, did you want to respond? All right, that concludes our public forum section of the agenda. Next item is county-issued email addresses. A couple of years ago, we were discussing emails, and we were getting a presentation from the county attorney about public record retention and sunshine, getting our annual training, if you will, on Florida Sunshine and Public Records. And so I asked the county if they would issue all of the citizen members a county TDC-issued email address so that we did not have to use personal email addresses to retain all those emails. And they said yes, and I received one. I don't know if, I guess, Tish, I think you were on the board then. You may not have been. And Shirley, where I don't know if Jim was either, but I think I'm the only one that's using it, and we have now 2 more members, but you guys aren't using them. And I know there have been some concerns about getting emails, retaining emails. And so I've asked the county to, again, issue some email addresses to the citizen, the non-elected officials on the TDC, so that all the TDC-related emails can go through their system, be retained by the county in case you accidentally delete something out of your inbox. It's still retained by the county as a public record. And so the county is working on that. right now. And I don't know if, John, you wanted to come on up? John is the new, tell us your title. I think you work in the OMB, but.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, board members. My name is John Arar. I'm the new County Chief Information Officer. Have talked with the chairman here regarding provisioning email addresses to non-elected. If you are not already a government official, you've been appointed, we don't see any issues with providing this board with email addresses. There are certain requirements that we have to have, and that is a signed IT use policy. And that IT use policy clarifies some of the obligations and responsibilities that you have once you have a county email address. And so one of the things that we've been working on, I've been in the position now for about 3 weeks, had talked to Mr. Bear prior to that. We do have a streamlined version. I just wanted to give you an example. So we've had a use policy for county employees. You don't fall, those who are citizens, non-county employee type folks. We have a 9-page document that kind of clarifies, but it is only for county employees. What we've been working on is a policy, a streamlined policy that is 3 pages in length, and that just identifies just the specific obligations you have as citizen, non-elected or non-county employees. So I did talk with the county attorney, or actually exchanged emails, and she is perfectly fine with you signing off on the county employee version. We wanted to give you an advisory committee version as opposed to a full one. But if you're willing to sign off on the full county employee, only those sections that are relevant to your position as a TDC member would apply. But we have to have that on file before we can create those email addresses. I don't have an explanation for the chairman having a county email address without that document on file, but we do have to collect those. So what I can do, I'll work with Danielle. We'll send you a copy of the policy. If you could just review it and sign off on it. I'll see if we can't make it electronic signature, so you can just sign it once you receive it on your personal email. Once you do that, return it. We will then generate a county email address for you. Unfortunately, there will be a new policy that, again, will be approved by the BCC coming up in the second meeting in March. Once the BCC approves it, we will then send that new one out to you, and you'll just have to sign the streamlined version. It's really just in terms of your sense of urgency, Mr. Chairman and board members. If you like that policy and you want to have those emails right away, we can do that. Or if you would want to wait for another 10 or 12 days, once the BCC approves the new policy, we can send it out at that time. It's really the pleasure of the TDC at this point. Whatever you'd like to do, I'm happy to do.
Okay, thank you. And I guess that's up to the individual members. If they want to wait, then they won't sign it, and they'll just wait until the new one.
That's correct.
I just want to help try to make this a lot easier on the members of retaining the email address, the emails and correspondence. So, thank you. I appreciate you being here today.
You're welcome.
Any questions or comments from anyone?
Okay, thank you. Have a good meeting.
All right, thank you, John. All right. Next item is the Navy Days, proposed Navy Days funding. Come on down, Todd and sir.
Mr. Chairman, good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Dan McCourt, longtime member of the community and a retired naval officer. I know you already know Todd as the president of our Chamber of Commerce. We're here to talk today about the upcoming Navy Days event. I will bring up a couple of points. First is I'm the current president of that organization. I relieved Mr. Tom Kinsella, who I think you guys all know. He was poached by the mayor to do good things for the city. However, we are in a position, as I go back in time, both Tim and I, when Tim was the commanding officer of the Naval Air Station, and I was the president of the local Navy League, realized that Pensacola did not have an event that recognized our military in the ways we think we should. We envisioned the equivalent of a mini Fleet Week. And in fact, we pursued that. But unfortunately, the Navy has specific rules on what can be deemed a Fleet Week, so we couldn't use that term. Therefore, the term Navy Days came out, in case you all wonder where that happened to come from. The point is, we really wanted to gather and recognize those members of all of our military, so even though it says Navy Days, it will be for all the services that are here local in Pensacola. The intent is to have essentially a week's worth of activities. We start with a event, gallery night in April that will be Navy Days themed. We'll roll into the week in May, which is our particular week, which we'll recognize with and a couple of events. We'll start with a gala at the Museum of Naval Aviation. That'll be a formal black tie event. We also will have, leading up to that, an opportunity for a golf tournament. That'll be a Friday before. Then on the Saturday itself, we'll have something downtown. It's going to start at Plaza de Luna, go up to Veterans Park. That'll be a run that'll take place, so a significant participation in a run. Following the run, there will be a parade. This will involve Danny Zimmern and all the parade crowd and the crews that are local to Pensacola. These will all be a way to provide an opportunity to recognize our military people. The parade will go from Veterans Park and bring it back down to the Plaza de Luna. Surrounding Plaza de Luna, we have requested and right now look to have several of our maritime ships locally. So right now we've had a commitment from the Coast Guard for 5 cutters to be down here at Plaza de Luna for that period of time. We've also requested a couple of Navy ships. That's a significant draw for people to come down. Following all that, the parade will end. We'll have recognition by the city of our 2 commanding officers, both up at Whiting Field and NES Pensacola, and culminate with the incorporation of youth. So during the parade, we'll have requested and already have the support of the local school board to provide marching bands, junior Reserve Officer Training Corps cadets out there. It'll be a very, very family-friendly, very public, very fun event with a family fun fest that will culminate all this, which is essentially like a big picnic and opportunity for kids and an exposure down at Plaza de Luna. So bottom line to all that, this is an opportunity to involve the community. We're going to expect a lot of out-of-town participation. We tried this last year. You may be aware of the fact we tried last year. It was our first event. Sadly, we had a well-known, well-publicized, in advance weather event that precluded us executing the event as we had hoped. So our success last year, in spite of that, still brought in Coast Guard ships that drew several thousand people to visit those. We still had a pretty successful run. And in that run, at least 20% of those people came from out of state, so we're bringing in a lot of people. We did develop room nights last year, even though we had a significant challenge with regard to hosting and executing as a function of weather. So where we are then this year is we are that much better at getting things ready. We've got things lined up. Of course, we can't change the weather, but we're hoping for that. And if we do so, we're projecting something on the order of about 20,000 people. Last year, in spite of the fact we had bad weather, we had 6,700 people. Like I said, we generated some room nights, which is what the tourism dollars are all about. So this is going to be the community recognizing the military. It's going to generate interest. It's going to bring people in from out of county, out of state, and bring in folks to Pensacola to appreciate our military. So in a nutshell, that's what we plan to do. Todd, anything that you want to add to all that? Other than that, we are asking for $100,000 of support. We have a budget that's just over $250,000. We've got sponsorship lined up to support and bring in the rest. I think we've done all we can. We believe that's going to be a fun, good event, both for the community and for the military. And I know we're going to bring in tourists from a lot of places that are going to come back time and again. Our plan is for this to become a, no kidding, like a Fleet Week annual event that will live on in Pensacola for many years to come. I'm happy at this point to answer questions.
Great, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Any questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Fortunately, I participated in the planning of the event last year, and as a result, unfortunately, I'm going to have to recuse myself from this topic.
I'm sorry. You participated in the planning last year, and
Yeah, I was on the planning group last year for last year's event, and I don't think it'd be appropriate for me to vote on this year's event. I'm going to recuse myself from this topic.
okay. Tish?
I do got some questions. So out of the participants that you had, I read that you had 12% of them were out of county. Is that correct?
Roughly, in terms of participation, we looked about 25% were from out of county, out of state.
And
Of the runners, that was about 20%. But of overall participation, and again, our numbers last year are about 6,700 people in spite of all the bad weather. So about a quarter of them came from distant where they were staying someplace locally, a hotel.
And so, sorry, you're right. So 12% actually stayed in hotels is what you're saying, out of the 1,700 that came. So if I did my math right, that's 204 people, and that's how you got the 100 room nights.
That came from our RAP report from the organization that did the survey. So however that number played out, it did.
I think I've mentioned this to some folks at Visit Pensacola, but I really think the folks that do these numbers, somebody needs to sit down and go over the metrics with them. The math isn't right on it. I don't want to go into details
Right.
with it, but down in St. Germain's or Visit Pensacola, whoever puts this together in the reports, I think just because it's in the report doesn't mean it's right. But from a hotel standpoint, I think I don't support this event. I think there's a lot of folks that are highly respected in Pensacola that are a part of it, and just because they're a part of it, we gave them such high dollars. I wasn't here for the meeting. That's the one meeting I missed. I know you guys came in asking for 50, and somehow you ended up getting double that. You didn't use all of it, thank God. But I don't know how this event gets any better to improve from 100 room nights. And if you get 100,000 or 50,000, that's a lot of room nights that should be produced for that type of money. And I think you've got to show it. You've got to prove it. And if it was my own money, I wouldn't give you any of it. I know we're spending bed tax dollars, so people give it to you how they feel. But I don't think that this event was a success. I know we can blame it on the weather, but I think even if the weather was perfect, even if you double the room nights or triple the room nights, you're still only at 300 room nights. It's just not a good return on investment for the tax dollars that are spent.
Thank you, Chairman. One more, Mr. Bear, Councilman Bear, and I'll go to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to thank Mr. Schaefer and Mr. Palmer for their review and their comments. I wasn't aware, I've done one of these because the organization I work for on my regular job, I have to do one of these requests for support. It's not from TDC money. It's from the county. I think ours comes from some solid waste fees or something. But so I know it's a lot of work to put the information in here, and I also value what goes in here. And I'm trying to figure out how you go from 100 to 500 room nights after having an event that was, affected by weather, but was probably could have been more successful. But where do you say 20,000, that's a 300% increase, then you're saying a 500% increase in room nights. I don't necessarily think that just because you had bad weather that people didn't stay that extra night in the room. I don't think everyone just left. Probably when they found out, maybe they couldn't cancel their room reservation anyway, so 100 may be what we would have gotten anyway. So what are you basing the 500 on at this point?
Well, first of all, in this case, the weather event was forecast significantly in advance, as a lot of these things are. So we ended up with people that just didn't even make a reservation. So it wasn't that they arrived and left early, they just didn't come because this was a well-forecast, thought-out, this is going to be a bad event. So we know that had a significant impact on our participation.
Would you compare that to like the weather that's coming up this week? Because I know like if I had a trip scheduled and I lived in New Orleans and I was coming to Pensacola this week, I would be canceling that. Would you say that was a similar event to
Exactly.
last week?
We live here in Pensacola, and these days, people have good access to weather reports, and if they envision it's going to make it for a not fun time, they're not going to come. So yes, I would have to say that's true. Now, does that mean we're liable for that again? Absolutely. We live in Pensacola. It's going to be in May. Generally, that's a good time, but it can be another bad weather period. I really do believe, one, this will be a hit. I hope, Mr. Patel, you will come and join us, even if you don't support us, because it'll be fun and represent the military. But we really do believe, with the progress we made from the last event in terms of exposure and advance notice, that we're going to get a much better participation for this one. Certainly on the run side, because that's already that generates, that's its own energy. A run event brings a lot of people in. A la the McGuire's run just last week. Run events bring in a lot of people. I really think the run alone is going to bring in a bunch of stuff, but obviously it's a forecast. There's no guarantee for any of this. So be honest with you, that's the way this stuff's done, as you well know.
Okay, so you really don't have a justification as to why you say 500 room nights other than the
Well, it's
run?
based on the initial response we had from people last year that ended up not coming because of a U-turn because of weather. So it's a postulated number, but yes, I believe that's a fairly accurate number in terms of what this draw is capable of bringing.
Okay, I'll let other people, and then I'll make some debate.
Thank you. Mr. Reeves?
Who asked Visit Pensacola and Pensacola Sports to review this request?
Will you speak into your microphone, sir? I heard you, and I'll answer your question. So at the February county, at one of the February county commission meetings, they were addressing different events. I think they were discussing the Wine on the Water event, and it had come directly to us, and some of the county commissioners had requested that the DMOs review any requests before they came to us for a funding request, and just gave their opinion. And
So what'd they say?
so I forwarded that to them, and the emails from them were in the packet. I can,
I mean, shouldn't we listen to them or?
sure, would you like me to ask them to speak? Ray and Darren, would you please come up?
And just for clarification on that, from the Board of County Commissioners standpoint, our goal is to start pushing all of the ask for events back to the DMOs. That way, when they come to you, it's a little bit more consistent. So we're going to ask that they open up grant funding throughout the year, not just once a year, so it can be more consistent.
Welcome.
So the question is,
I guess Mr. Reeves was wanting to know your opinion after reviewing the request for funding.
okay, I did not bring a copy of my comments. What I said in it was I covered, the original application and what it said in there, and that, yes, they did have to deal with a significant weather event that I know the event itself had to watch it for up to a week leading up to it, and had to make that call as far as canceling, I think Saturday as early as Thursday, and had to send that out. I know that because of that, events were impacted. My commentary on it was that as far as room night generation and the forecast for 500 room nights for year 2, that I couldn't justify the ask of $100,000, and said that as far as funding, I believe my comment was up to the $500,000 or $50,000 that was actually requested originally in year 1, but that was increased by a council member that is no longer on the council last year.
Ray?
So this request, we were, quite frankly, caught a little off guard, not knowing that it was coming to us for review. And it came over on a Friday afternoon, said we need you feedback pretty quickly, and I knew I was headed out of town. So I gave it a fairly good glance and review. And of course, I look at grants all the time, and have for decades. And so I looked at the numbers and what the report showed and what the ask was. Of course, we were here last year when they asked for 50, and one of the the TDC members said, oh, no, let's give it 100. Well, they didn't even ask for 100. And so, 100 room nights. And I didn't put it through our grant committee normal process, Jim. I just looked at what normal things that we do invest in and what those returns are. And this didn't measure up with something big, but we don't always just look at room nights. There's value to the community. There's economic value in marketing and exposure to our community. None of that was provided to us, so I questioned because the TDC had permitted this allocation, is that what the TDC looks for? Are they giving value to whatever the marketing value was? That wasn't provided to us, and that's a whole nother thing on top of just room nights and economic impact. So I don't know what that value was, or whether that's what the TDC was trying to buy by providing $100,000. So I just gave a quick response saying, I'm not really sure what y'all's measurements and you want us. It would not get this kind of number under our process and our procedure and our grant program. I don't feel like it would, but that's all it was kind of a quick, hey, give us your thoughts real quick.
So would you say that you're probably, if you were going to recommend anything, you're recommending $50,000 because of the room nights, without taking any consideration to the fact that we are a Navy town?
I don't know if that's a trick question or not. The fact that it's a Navy town, we're a Navy town, is a fact that is indisputable, and I believe that this event has possibilities, but we take events, we have people come in and request funds for us all the time with dreams and visions, and we make them perform. Quite frankly, we wouldn't probably give them $10,000 based on our schedule and time of year and all the things that we look at and the numbers that they're projecting. And quite frankly, most of ours are put on a sliding scale. You tell me you're going to get $500, then you're going to get X amount of dollars if you get your 500 room nights. If you're going to get if you do your 500 room night, if you don't, it's a sliding scale down on the dollars that are given to you. That's the way Pensacola Sports grant program is structured and is in place. And so we're just kind of a different animal. We're not probably as expensive, and if there was value or if there was specific marketing dollars that were tied to that, they would have to show us where an organization spent that marketing dollar, and then we would reimburse against that. Is that a better answer?
I like the clawback for the money.
Depends on what side you're on.
I'm not on any side.
Well, I said. You said it's a better answer, and I said it depends on what side you're on.
Well, I would say this, when I originally responded, I said I'm uncomfortable doing so because there are no guide rails, right? There's nothing from the TDC or the Board of County Commissioners that says we value room nights or we value media or multiple days or the quality of the marketing plan, who's involved. Because when we do our grant program, our maximum is $50,000, and it is based on the time of year and is at multiple days and the room night projection and the community involvement in securing hotel room blocks and what percentage of the budget is and where the other revenue is coming from and are there sponsors. I mean, we look at all those things about the quality of an application and the potential for an event to grow year over year. We don't have that currently set up, but as I said in my email, we would love to put that down because, like Ray said, I mean, when you're doing grant applications, the emotion really shouldn't be in there. It really shouldn't be who's asking it. It's about the quality of the event and what that event will produce and the potential for it to evolve and grow over time.
Any other comments, questions?
I had a question too. You can go first.
Councilwoman?
I have a couple, yes. Yes. I think that, I'm curious about why professional services is going from 7,400 to 20,000, why contractual services going from 17,000 to 25,000, some things like that I don't know. Event expenses going up 40,000, and other expenses. I don't know what the other expenses are. So I've got some concerns over that. If this, taking it to a full 100,000 more for cost this year than last year. Those concern me, if you want to address any of those.
So we'll start on the expense side. As was already mentioned, we didn't have expenses last year because most of the events were canceled, and so those expenses, other than the marketing part, the expenses themselves didn't materialize. So the number this year reflects those happening, all the events, not just two. So that's what that number is. I did fail to mention earlier that a lot of the draw for this, because it's a recognition piece for the military general, Florida, and particularly Northwest Florida, is a huge bed of retired and very involved military people. We know for a fact, having received lots of feedback, that if we hold an event such as this, and why do we project people will come? Because we have so many people in the Panhandle area that are going to want to come and watch a military flavored event and recognition piece with which they very closely identify. So we leverage a lot of our speculation on the population and their disposition to want to participate in something like this.
Yeah, okay, so on these, like, on the cost for last year, I see rentals and leases you didn't pay last year, and this year that's 15,000, and I get some of these things changing. But it shows that you had 60,000 for event expenses last year, 40,000 this year. Those are the things that you're saying didn't come to fruition?
So for example, in expenses last year, marketing was a sunk cost that was paid no matter what. So all the marketing effort that went into it, and some of the vendor supplies, those things were pre-purchased. So yeah, those costs held. But a lot of things we were able to cancel, and they didn't end up being an expense.
All right. That's it for right this moment.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner?
I had two questions. What events were canceled last year? I know the Family Fun Day was on my schedule and we didn't go because it stormed, but what other events were
Essentially, everything was canceled last year other than, we did 3 events, well, 2 events really. We did the run. Runners will run in the rain, although a lot of them canceled. And we had the gala, the black tie event at the museum. And then we had the recognition piece that had to be moved from Maritime Park indoors with a small group there. And that's really all we were able to do last year.
Okay, and then I know that the majority of the people who come to Pensacola drive in, especially to come and visit for the beach. How are you guys targeted marketing those military families that are in a driving distance to get them down here for this event?
So, in fact, I have our marketing expert sitting here with me, but largely this is going to be through various media, social, print, video, radio. The marketing, there'll be a substantial marketing campaign to reach out to all those people. We've already have, as I said, word of mouth from last year, so there are people waiting to hear about it for this year that will plan to come, that were going to come last year that will in fact come this year. So the marketing will be it's a blitz campaign that'll go out.
Okay, wonderful. Do you have additional details on the marketing?
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Council. I'm Brent from Cat Country 98.7. I know most of you. And I know that we came together at Senator Broxton's request in July of 2023 to ultimately kind of start this Pensacola Navy Days committee. And the idea was, as Dan said, how do we honor our community, tie that together, and make sure that Washington knows that we appreciate the military in our community. And so we spent about a year coming together to make this work. And ultimately, last year, the rainout was not anyone's favorite way to spend that particular weekend. But we did engage using the TDC dollars from last year, and $37,415 was paid media but Showcase, who took care of the media for us, received $59,350 in kind. So we had about $100,000 worth of media that went into this. Most of the paid media was out of market, and we have several drive markets that we frequently use with Visit Pensacola that would make sense for us. New Orleans, for example, Jacksonville. I mean, if you're in a Navy town somewhere on the Gulf Coast, you probably got the opportunity to find out we were going to do this. And if you're in a Navy town somewhere on the Gulf Coast, most likely you passed through Pensacola at some point in your naval career. So this is an event that makes sense, and I would encourage, I mean, I don't think any of us on the committee came here with the idea that we were going to in some way make money from it personally. I think the goal obviously is to turn this into the community event that it can be. And I know when we sat around in that initial meeting, the idea was, what does this look like in 5 years? That first year, we got to have it. The second year, we really got to have it because the first year was not what everybody hoped it would be. But can it be the essential Fleet Week in 5 years? And given the history of what we have in our community, I think that it certainly can. I certainly believe in it. Our station is committed to almost $30,000 of basically free advertising to this event. I know WEAR is equally as committed to being able to provide that. What your dollars will provide to us ultimately is the ability to market this out of town. I'm not going to go personally reach out to someone in New Orleans to come here. WEAR isn't going to go reach out to somebody in New Orleans to come here. We are going to be the absolute best media representatives of this event within our own community, and we're looking forward to the parade and the run and all the fun stuff that's going to happen. The gala we considered it a sellout at about 270 people last year, realizing we can go up to 500 people this year, and that's going on sale next week. So we have a lot of drive for that. The run had 400 people register for it. Not going to lie, I've never done a run before. I know we were a little concerned. About 4 weeks out from the run, suddenly we went from 90 people to 400 people registered by the time the event happened. So, in a great partnership with the USO, the Runway 5K helped us out immensely with their group of runners. So I have no reason to believe that won't pay for itself or the gala won't pay for itself. Moving it to Plaza de Luna this year makes a lot of sense for us. If we have a Plaza de Luna surrounded by Coast Guard cutters, which Dan has reached out for, and we are in the process of making that happen. Can you imagine what that's like as people come into Plaza de Luna? If you remember what the tall ships imprint looked like, we will have a fantastic backdrop for this. Again, I go, what happens this year sets the tone, and hopefully the fantastic video and pictures we'll be able to show to getting to what Fleet Week for Pensacola looks like in 5 years. And your dollars will help us make sure that we are reaching out of market for those people to know we are having this. And obviously this is an investment in what happens year in and year out. Jason and Mr. Patel, I concur. I can't figure out why we would not have more room nights, other than to say, at the point that we get to a week out and have a massive thunderstorm happening that looks like this weekend, and we start canceling events because it got real, I mean, the parade wasn't going to roll with floats. They just were not going to happen. But what can that look like as we go into what I hope will be a beautiful weekend this year? And how do we set that pace for what is happening in year number 5? Man, what a great place to celebrate the Navy and all of our armed forces here in Pensacola. And that's ultimately what this is. And I can certainly break down more notes for you if you have questions about it. But I'm telling you, I think we did the best job we could using Showcase as the example for how to utilize the TDC funds for media and out-of-market advertising. And I hope that this year we will have a gazillion room nights, and more importantly, some fantastic events to talk about for year number 3, 4, and how we set up year number 5. Thank you.
Thank you, Brent.
Darren, I have a question about Showcase. So when they market on social media and they say, hey, come to Pensacola for Navy Days, and somebody clicks on the ad and then they're like, oh yeah, cool, I'm going to book on Pensacola Beach. Do they track those metrics, so the turnover from who saw it to who actually booked?
That's right.
Okay, are they available for this event from last year?
Should be. Yep.
Okay.
So they did a RAP report, which I believe was submitted with the application from what I remember. So both, yeah, the RAP report from Showcase as well as the study done by Downs and St. Germain. And Tish, we can follow up on your comments and talk about that, and go through the numbers. Happy to do it.
I think it was a separate email. Yeah, I think all that came as a separate email after the fact. After we uploaded all the stuff for the agenda. So You should have gotten a separate email, but it's not included in the printed packet today.
But short
Brad?
answer is yes.
Thanks.
What I'm trying to unpack in my head is the budget on marketing and promotion is going down 10%, 9%, but yet the estimates or the desired gain is pretty high. So I'm trying to connect those dots and how the promotion is going down, but the estimates are going up.
I defer to you guys.
Can you
showed
repeat that again,
66,000 You
please?
showed $66,000 last year for marketing promotion. This year, you budgeted $60,000.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think that, we did have some of the startup costs in terms of events that were not utilized because of the weather. So the Fun Fest, the parade, things like that. So, putting a little more money there while pulling back a little bit on the marketing, but still being pretty close.
Well, there's one other thing to that too. We created a lot of the video from that previous year's. We create a lot of the video from this year's event. Like for instance, for the run, we don't have to recreate any of that. We have the video for this. So there's not going to be the additional cost to creating some of that. So some of that part goes down.
Councilman Bear?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm just interested, you have partnering organizations here like Visit Pensacola, Area Chambers, which I'm sure, Todd, he works for a chamber. Escambia County School District, what are these partners doing with you or for you in this? What does that mean to be a partner organization?
So I'll address, for example, the school system. They, as partnering for this event, are the ones who are seeing to it that we have marching bands, junior ROTC units. We involve some of their staff, their parents, their faculty, all that.
Okay.
So it is as I said, a wholesome family-centric event. So therefore, it's got a lot of children involved, so therefore the school system.
Okay.
And they can showcase all of them.
So these organizations aren't providing staff or funding?
No.
Okay. And it's curious to me that your income was 183 for this current year, and your expenses were like 161, so you had money left over at the end of the year. And what happened with that money?
It's frankly still in the bank. We didn't spend it, therefore it was our seed money to start this year.
Okay.
So that is still there. It's not
So
gone.
is that included in the amount that you're showing for income for this current year? Or
Yeah,
is that
it was,
in
right?
addition?
Yeah, it was.
Okay, because you're also showing for this current, what you're requesting now, you're requesting 216, or I guess your total expense are 216, and your income's 250. So that leaves you with 34 at the end. I'm just not sure why you're ending up with so much money. Is that just for next year, or is that so? Why would you do that?
Well, again, we look at the overall promotion costs and startup costs. We still, again, we didn't have a full-flavored first event. So we still have, as Brent just mentioned, some stuff was an investment made we don't have to reinvest. Some stuff we didn't get to do. So we still have those startup costs, and that's what that's about.
Okay, but your income you're showing for this coming year is 250, and your expenses are 216. So you want us to give you money so you'll have extra left over at the end, pretty much. Or you're not going to take it from TDC money, it'll be from some other source?
From other sources, right.
Okay.
No, as was mentioned, your dollars are going to go into promotion, and they will all be spent on promotion. So our plan, being good stewards of our own business, is to try to have something left over to turn over for the next time. As was mentioned, this is a long-term plan. We want to have this thing go out for many years in the future. So every event, every organization, of which all of you are a part, I'm sure, those organizations have to have something in the bank before they start the next year. So this is going to be our perpetuating fund to allow us to keep things moving.
Okay. And you've already said that we can't have a real fleet week here. Isn't that what you said?
You can't use that term.
Okay.
So the
Does that
Navy...
imply ships? The fleet week would imply ships typically, or?
It's a term that the Department of the Navy uses in what we call a large fleet concentration center, of which we are not.
Right.
And it involves a place where there's lots of ships, which we do not have.
Right.
So we just can't use that term. It will look and smell and feel just like a fleet week, but it just can't use that term. That's all.
Without the
It's
ships?
like a copyright thing.
Okay. You know, and I'll just say, I think this community has a strong love of the Navy, and I think that a lot of people will come out for this. I just don't see this as being a huge draw for people outside of our community. I mean, we don't have a fleet. You know, we have the Blue Angels. A lot of people come for the Blue Angels. And so I think that's a great event when we have Blue Angel shows, but I don't see the 500 room nights materializing for this particular event. And, you know, as a fairly new member, I just feel like we need to be cautious with how we spend the TDC money. We've got another item that we talked about last meeting I felt like fell in this kind of the same category. As far as pro-military, I'm pro-military, I'm an Army guy. There's lots of non-Navy people here too that would probably love to have some celebration of just military or veterans or something like that. So I'm not offended by the fact that it's just Navy days. I think it's great that we have something to celebrate what we currently have, but I also think that, you know, there's comparison to the McGuire's run. You can't compare your run to the McGuire's run. I mean, until you've been around for decades, you know, and it's just a totally different thing. And, you know, runs do draw a crowd, and you probably get a lot of people from the Navy base to come out to your run, and USO was mentioned as well. I don't see them listed as a partner in here, but they probably were technically a partner.
We're talking about the base?
USO.
Oh, correct, they were.
Yeah, USO. So I'm not inclined at this point to, you know, I don't want to hear other comments, but I think probably last year it was too much. I don't know which council member at the time, and I understand they're not on council anymore, but they raised it up to 100, or recommended raise it up to 100. Council had to vote for that. But I feel like this is quite a jump, and it's very, you have lots of high hopes for what it could be, but I don't think there's the track record to prove that we're going to get to 500 room nights at this point.
Yeah. Understand. We're looking to build that track record.
Yes, Councilwoman.
Okay, so I'm having the same problems, and this is not about the validity of the idea of this. I think it's a great idea and all that kind of stuff, but I'm stuck on the fact that where is the 23 extra thousand? So when I'm looking at the income table, there's contributions, donations. I don't think it's in that category. Program income, I don't think it's there unless it is. Like, where is that 23,000 in this income?
So we had a number of sponsorships from various businesses throughout our community or who support our military, and so that's where that money came from.
That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking for the leftover 23,000 from last year, that's your seed money this year. Where is it in here? Where does it show in your proposed budget year income? Like, shouldn't there be another 23,000 added here?
We can add that, sure.
Okay, so that means that this would really be $273,000, of which they're proposing $216,000 to be spent, which is still over the, even if they'd spent everything that they proposed last year, which would have been the 183. So this, had it been fully envisioned last year, it would have been 183. So they're proposing that goes to 216, but they'd have 273 in the bank for it. So I have no rationale in my head of why we would go that high. And I think at best, we pull it back to the 50,000 that was originally asked, is what and then if we did that, that'd still leave them accordingly with 223,000, which is over the projected 216,000, with the ability to still raise money. I mean, so I think that at most, we go with that 50,000. And if we don't want to discuss anymore, I'll obviously back off if anyone wants to discuss something, but I would make that, I would propose that if everyone's done with having a conversation.
I would second that.
Any other
I would agree,
comments?
and I also just pulled up the RAP report. The click-through rates were really good, but it doesn't show the conversion rates to hotel stays. So the click-through rates were really good. I would just make sure to focus that on outside of this area, and make sure it's not people like us sitting in East Hill clicking on it.
Yeah, and I did hear from Showcase on that item that Google changed something with their how they track things, and so they weren't able to capture that last year, but they figured something out for this year that will work
Oh, the
around.
Google bots, yes.
I'm sorry?
I said, oh, the Google bots.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, thank you. That makes sense. And I would agree with you guys as well.
Are we ready?
Well, I was going to make a couple
Okay, go
points.
ahead, I'm
I was just
sorry.
letting everybody else speak. Well, thank you, and thank you for doing the event last year. I was also summoned to the senator's office for that initial meeting to talk about doing this and the reason why it would be important to our community. And you know, when I think about events for Pensacola to try to attract tourists, what is tourism development and how can this event be successful or measured as success? You know, obviously room nights is a very valuable variable in that calculation, but it obviously, as several others have said, it's not the exclusive variable in that. We need to look at what is the economic impact of the event to the area. Heads and beds is one measure. Other, you know, direct, indirect expenses are also important. And when we look at, from my perspective, when I was evaluating this and we were talking about it last year, in my mind, I was trying to imagine what the impact would be if we were to grow a Navy Days to attract the attention of military leadership, not only retired from the area, obviously they all love it here, so when they retire, they move back here, or stay here when they get out if they're already stationed here. But what if we get the attention through this event by showing leadership in Washington, D.C. that we appreciate the military and its impact on our community economically and, you know, and all other matters, because they affect our education system, they affect everything, right? And so what if we get their attention and they come here and they see the needs in our community through our military bases? We keep reading in the news about having to put nets above the Blue Angels because the ceiling is falling on them, concrete is falling on them. We have to close down hangars at Pensacola NAS because they are dilapidated, and we're trying to get investment from the Navy to build another $250 million hangar to house these jets and others, and so and other programs we have out there. We're also looking at obviously what's going on at Corey Field, and we want to try to get an expansion of those programs out there from an economic impact perspective. How do we get their attention? How do we get them to look at Pensacola? Because they're looking at Arlington, they're looking at, you know, everywhere else, Jacksonville, but they're even looking at, obviously they're spending billions down in Panama City at Tyndall, but the Navy has a different perspective, and they can't lobby for themselves. And so how do we just get their attention to come here so we as citizens can talk to them, show them we appreciate what they do here in our community? And so I think this event, Navy Days, was created to try to showcase Pensacola and Pensacola's appreciation for the Navy and the military. And so for that, I was personally invested. I was interested. We sponsored, my family's company sponsored it. From a TDC perspective, I thought it was a great opportunity for us to tell the message to the area, whether it's starting out regionally and expanding that over time so we can tell that message louder and louder as we continue to build it. I think last year was really disappointing that the weather affected it so significantly. Acts of God, we can't control that. Nobody can. And so, when I'm looking, just to answer your question, looking at well, I call it a P&L because I'm in the private world, but the income and the expense statement, it has at the bottom of last year the $23,000. It doesn't show a balance sheet where it shows what was retained at the end of the year. And so it obviously on here it doesn't show a beginning balance because this is just what is the income. A beginning balance is an income. It was derived from last year and carried over. But I don't disagree with your point you were making. If there's going to be a beginning balance with a piece of, with the income from obviously appropriation from the county of tourist development tax and private income from sponsorships and other program related, if you're not budgeting to even spend what you plan to raise plus the beginning balance, then do you really need the amount that you're requesting, the $100,000. I know it'll be spent all in marketing because that's what you guys have said. And so I think there needs to be a justification on spending $100,000 on marketing if you plan to retain $50,000+ at the end of the year and not spend it, because you're going to raise it through other private donations. So again, I think it's a great event. I appreciate everything the Navy does. I can tell you my family has benefited significantly from the military when we were in the wholesale grocery business. At some point through consolidation of that industry, military commissaries were our main customers. And so, and still today, obviously with, our beverage business, that's a big supporter of it. But they support and impact our community as a whole. So I want to support this program. I just need to be able to justify the investment that the TDC makes, the county makes into it. If you're going to retain a bunch of money, obviously it makes sense to get some money, to hold money or get early sponsorships to start that investment. But, I have that same question. Why are we retaining money? If we're going to raise it, not spend it, why do you need that much?
And I can address, one of our sponsors actually gave late this year. They were going through their budget. Can we go ahead and give you some money for next year in this year's report? So there was a little bit less that was actually, after the event on hand. That we've added a little bit since then. So, but appreciate your comments. And yes, to your point, getting the attention of folks in Washington, D.C. is very important. Our base is very important to our community and our economy, and these things get noticed. It is important. So that is definitely one of the reasons that Senator Broxton brought this to us. And, we really believe this can grow and become the event that really could be a crown jewel of the Gulf Coast in supporting the military.
Councilwoman?
Okay. I am going to. I hope that does, and when you come back, we'll be more than happy to recognize that. But I am going to make a motion that we reduce this to $50,000 this year. And sorry, but after that long spiel, I just have to say, my mom was Navy, my dad was Air Force. I'm a total military brat, and it's very much important to this area. I get that completely, and this has nothing to do with it. It just means we have so many things that we have to fund, and that is the only reason for such an adjustment.
Thank you. And you seconded, Councilman?
Second.
All right. Thank you. So we have a motion, a second. Further discussion? Did you have a comment, Mr. Reeves? No. Any other comment? Any other discussion? Hearing none. Will you please call the roll?
James Reeves,
Yes.
Ashley Hoffberger,
Yes.
David Bayer,
Yes.
Matish Patel,
Yes.
Charles Bayer,
Yes.
Jennifer Bayer,
Yes.
Brad Mullinex,
Yes.
and Jason said he's not voting.
I'm abstaining.
And I think you will, Ms. Huell, he's abstaining from the vote because of a conflict. Does he need to fill out a conflict of interest form? Okay, if you won't mind after the meeting, getting with Kristen. Thank you. Great.
Just thank you for your support, and we look forward to seeing you all at Navy Days this year.
Thank you again.
Mr. Chairman, once again, and for the committee, we hope to present ourselves in front of next year with a demonstrated success. So please come and join us. We look forward to seeing you all out there. Thanks much.
We'll see you.
Thank you so much. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, council members. So for this particular action item that you just approved, I just want to, for council purposes, this will come from your special event reserve.
Yes, sir. Great, thank you. And real quick, Todd, before you run out. So I think this is on our agenda tonight because we received this later than our normal application process, because last year when you guys were creating Navy Days, that was when the current fiscal year's application request was due. And so you guys were just trying to get last year's appropriation and didn't have this year. So have you guys, I don't know when the deadline is for.
Yeah, it's March
The
31st, and
26th.
it's being
Okay.
worked on right now. So
Okay.
we will get that in promptly.
Great, and then
Yes.
next year it'll just come through our normal appropriation.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Next item on the agenda is General Chappie James Foundation Memorial Plaza. We do have a speaker signed up, Mr. Tom Jardine. Come on down.
Okay, thank you. Tom Jardine, 1112 V. DeLuna. Again, I wasn't planning on coming here, so I'm going to have to leave as soon as I speak. I don't want to be rude. I'm going to probably run out of here. I don't know that I did the parking app right. We'll see. I'll probably get a ticket. I'm 100% in favor of us using the citizens' bed tax money. Every penny of the bed tax belongs to the citizens. 100% in using the bed tax money to fund this General James statue. Everybody says that everybody says I'm in favor of doing the statue, but I don't want to use TDC money. I want to use the citizens' general funds, and I'm tired of using the citizens' general funds to pay for tourism. I don't really understand your funding, the way you guys, your funding decisions. Just as you guys were saying a minute ago in that last conversation, you're using the hotel room nights is factoring too heavy on your funding decisions. That is not in the statute. Our objective is not to maximize the hotel stays. Every penny that of the bed tax money belongs to the citizens. Every penny. The citizens have sacrificed all of our precious beach real estate. If you go to Pensacola Beach, all the real estate we gave away to the tourist industry. The citizens are paying for all the infrastructure for these tourists. The citizens are sacrificing our environment. And meanwhile, the citizens are not benefiting from our tourism. We can't pay for our bridges to be replaced. Our Pensacola Bay Center is in bad shape. We're misusing our bed tax money. Now, the only criteria you guys should be following is this statute going to be one of the main purposes be the promotion of tourism? And certainly, one of the main purposes of this statute will be tourism. If anybody's been to Mount Rushmore, that is a tourist attraction. This is a much smaller scale. They only want, $750,000 for bed taxes. But, we have monuments all over this country that attract tourists. Our most important tourist attractions throughout the country, the Washington Monument, the Statue of Liberty, Mount Rushmore. So, yes, this statute will definitely bring people into our area. We need to differentiate ourselves from our competition. One thing that we have that Panama City does not have is we have the very first African-American four-star general of the military. His hometown is Pensacola. This sort of thing enriches this community and differentiates us from our competition. Your criteria should be, how are you going to maximize the benefit to the citizens of Escambia County with our bed tax dollars? We shouldn't be worried about how many hotel rooms we're going to get, just how the bed taxes will maximize the citizens' benefit in the long term. That should be our one criteria. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jardine. All right, so I have added this item to our agenda today to give an update on the county's action and discuss the Haas Center Independent Economic Impact Assessment, and to propose or make a request for authorization to send the proposed letter to the Board of County Commissioners and the Florida Department of Revenue that has been attached to the packet. So to start, an update on the county action at the February 20th Board of County Commissioners meetings. They had a lengthy discussion of this item and Ultimately, the board voted in favor of funding this project using $750,000 worth of tourist development tax, and then some, I think maybe $100,000 of some other fund, $125,000 or $100,000 of $125,000 of some other funding source, maybe local option sales tax or general fund, I'm not sure. And in doing so, they claimed the clerk spoke and said that she saw this as a museum, and a museum is one of the enumerated construction of a museum using tourist development tax as an enumerated eligible item in the statute. So you may use tourist development tax to fund the construction of a museum. And so they decided that it was a museum. And so because of that, they voted in support of funding this. If I'm mischaracterizing, Commissioner, please. Okay. All right. And so they've recommended the funding of this project. So contingent on receiving the Haas Center economic impact assessment and also public ownership by the city of Pensacola. Obviously, the city of Pensacola hasn't taken that issue up yet, but it's part of the stewardship agreement negotiation. The county did, however, engage the Haas Center to do the independent study. In that study, I think it was attached to your in your packet. It's a 2-page report that shows the summary of expenses for the economic impact model, which was the construction of the project, and the direct, indirect, and induced findings. The short-term jobs, it created 24 and had a total economic output of $3.3 million for the $2.3 million investment. And it stated that the economic impact from this project was all short-term, 1 year, due to the construction. There was no finding in their study that supported that this project, as proposed, was supporting tourism. And so, obviously, if the city council hasn't met and discussed the public ownership piece, then the motion is still pending on that. But there is, as we have discussed before, at least certainly as I discussed, construction of this project isn't supporting tourism. It's supporting the construction industry. Promotion of this item, once it's constructed, could support tourism. Again, I believe this is a great project, a worthy cause, a worthy man to be honored, and I have personally donated in support of this project, but I don't believe it's an authorized use of the tourist development tax. So to thread the needle in considering to try to fund this project, when the county decided it was a museum instead of a plaza, a memorial plaza, as they've contended since the very beginning of this project, they threaded the needle to be able to try to make it eligible. However, it is not a museum. It's not a museum by definition, in any definition or program. There is no program. It is a statue. And if we were to consider that statue a museum, then why would we not consider every other statue in our community or across the country a museum? And there's a difference between a statue and a museum. And so I am proposing the letter that I attached, and hopefully you guys have all had time to review. Under the statute, we are obligated, if we believe there is an unauthorized expenditure of tourist development tax, we're obligated to report that to the county commission and to the Department of Revenue. In the past, we have done that. There were some marine resources expenditures and some other miscellaneous expenditures using tourist development tax. We reported that. And then following that, Florida Auditor General did the audit on our program, and those were some part of their findings in their report, were some of these, the expenses that we put on that, in that letter were, had no, I'm sorry, I'm failing for the words right now, how it was described, but essentially they were not determined by the Board of County Commissioners to be in support of tourism development. So therefore, they were not authorized. And so anyway, we've done this before. I am strongly suggesting we send this letter again. At our last meeting, we voted, the majority voted not to fund this project. We had that open discussion about whether it's eligible for funding or not. And so this seems to be the next step since the County Commission has approved it. I feel like we have the obligation under the statute to issue that letter to the County Commission and the Department of Revenue. So with that, I will
Did the clerk
turn it.
approve the expenditure?
So, well, and that's kind of my take on it. I feel like this might be a little premature because our motion was based on the fact that we have proof that it does contribute to tourism. That is not what the study came back as. So it would be my take, and I talked to Allison, the county attorney, and she agreed that it would have to come back in front of the board and we would have to vote on it again. So I would ask that you guys provide the Board of County Commissioners with a copy of this letter and a 60-day remedy, and then move forward and reconsider at your next meeting. That way we can at least rectify it based on the information that the Haas Center gave us.
I think it still gets to the point of the only way to fund, the only way that the county has decided to try to move forward with funding this, regardless of what the economic impact study comes back and says, is to call it a museum, and it's not a museum. And so if you don't believe it's a museum, then how do we use tourist development tax to construct a plaza when a plaza or a memorial is not an enumerated authorized use?
What does the clerk think it is?
The clerk said at the county commission meeting that she believed it's an open-air museum, that she's believed that since she first saw it, and therefore it would be eligible and she would fund it.
So she thinks it's a museum,
Yeah.
and you think it's not a museum?
I think there's definitions of what a museum is, and this project does not meet that criteria. There was another, in 1998, there was in Orange County and Orlando, they requested an attorney general opinion on using tourist development tax to fund another all wars memorial.
I don't know why you've gone to this much trouble in this case, but I found out that the general drank Miller beer.
Okay. Anyway, there was.
And I get where you're coming from. I feel like if we can't prove that it goes to tourism, it's a moot point. And I think that's probably an easier thing to justify and for the board to grasp, because either it is or it isn't. And if it's not, absolutely, we should not be spending money on it. So I think it might be easier to persuade the board that the nights are not there for it to be tourism taxes versus persuading them it's not a museum, if that makes sense. Because that is almost well, my definition of a museum is this. My definition's that, and then we have the letter from the Attorney General saying, well, maybe it could be if these criteria are met, and one of those criteria was the heads and beds. So if we can't meet that one, I feel like we couldn't move forward anyway.
So the Attorney General's letter, which is not an opinion about this specific project, was talking about the use of tourist development tax for this project, not for construction, but for the promotion of it. So if an economic impact study comes back and says, yes, this memorial can support tourism, that doesn't mean it can still be constructed using tourist development tax. It means it could be, tourist development tax may be used to promote the constructed facility, but doesn't mean it can be used to construct. And so I think that it's really important that we address the issue that this is not a museum, and therefore it's not eligible for tourist development tax to pay for the construction of it. Because I believe once it's constructed, it will draw tourists if it's promoted as tourism, for tourism development. Councilman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And, you know, I watched the county commission's deliberations, and it was more of a, we don't really care what the TDC thinks, we're going to go this way with some conditions. The condition that related to the city's ownership would have to come probably from the mayor first. It's not going to come from the council. The mayor would have to propose that to us. And I know it's not related because it's a totally different entity, but the Chappie James Museum had 545 visitors last year, generated 175 people who stayed in rooms at a maximum of about 350 room nights. And if that location, which is a great museum, is not generating a huge amount of tourism revenue, I don't know that a statue is going to do that. So, and as has been said, and we probably beat this horse too many times, I completely support the Chappie James Plaza, but this is not the correct source of funding. And I think that this letter is what we should do as a council, because even if the board hasn't finalized, they voted to do it with conditions. And I feel like we need to go forward with this and report it to not only the county commission, but also Department of Revenue. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman?
Yes, thank you. And I'll tell you, I also searched the definitions in the state for museum. And for history museum, you have to have multiple artifacts, curated, and programming. I mean, it is within the statutes, and I agree that this does not. I have concerns about our obligation. I mean, if we just say, no, not now, we'll do it later, have we then bypassed an obligation, statutory obligation that we acknowledge that we think this is misuse of funds by definition? So I think that we almost have to, whether we like it or not, for exactly that reason. That would be one. And I do, as I said before, I think that there's a lot of carts for the horse on this. I mean, there are a lot of unknowns. I mean, I hate that I'm even going to say this, but I'm going to say it because I want it to be heard, is we're talking about a 30-foot Chappie James next to a regular-sized airplane. I mean, it is an interesting image that would need a lot of upkeep in a very interesting area right there. So I'm not saying I still believe in this plaza, but I believe in a respectful representation of General James. And I think that, 3 years, I'm just saying this from this county, the city side, 3 years worth of guaranteed maintenance on this. I don't think we understand the maintenance on a 30-foot statue on the water right there. And so I think that we have to be very careful going forward and make sure that this is really appropriate. So 2 things there, 3 maybe.
And I would also say we try to make the best decision we can with the information
Absolutely.
Provided. And it is difficult when you're up here and you have Google and you have everyone's opinion that's on the board. And given that, I think that when we provided that vote of going with making sure that it had a positive impact on tourism, we made the best decision possible. That is now coming back to us, and knowing that that's going to be back on the agenda gives the TDC the opportunity to, again, put more information in front of us that we didn't have last time, because this is a significant amount more information than was presented to the board that evening. So I would like the other county commissioners to see this and be able to discuss that before it is provided and a audit is requested, because that does cost the county a significant amount of money. And I don't want, well, why is the Board of Tourism costing the county money for an audit when they could have just waited for the next board meeting? So I think it would be more physically responsible to give us the information here and then let us decide from there.
I don't think anybody's calling for an audit, number one. Number two, the last audit the state paid for, so the county didn't pay anything for it. It was just as a result of the letter. We didn't get any response from the Department of Revenue or from Escambia County as a result of the letter that we sent. And so that's when we were trying to figure out exactly what's going on and whether these are authorized expenditures and make sure that operationally tourism was running correctly in the county. And so we requested the audit from the Florida Auditor General through JLAC, and they provided that in their findings. One of their findings was that we sent a letter to the county commission addressing some unauthorized expenditures, and they didn't respond. And so that was one of their findings, and their recommendation was to respond to the letter for the next time. So we're not talking about doing another audit, because an audit of just this event.
It is the fear, the county attorney's fear that this letter will trigger an audit.
I think it's unfounded.
Okay.
Can we ask the attorney?
Are you talking about Allison or Kristen? Kristen's back there.
Yeah. Do you feel like, or is it your professional opinion this would trigger an audit?
Honestly, no one could predict that. Potentially.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you, Kristen.
No one can predict that with any certainty, potentially, but I really couldn't give you an opinion.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, just from a sort of an operational standpoint of this is a letter we're sending to the Department of Revenue, which is under, I believe that is under the Florida CFO department, and to the county commission. The Auditor General works for the legislature under the Joint Legislative Auditing Committee. And so these are just jointed items. I don't know why that would, the last time we sent a letter, it did not generate an audit. We requested an audit, and that's with jointly with our local legislative delegation, and that's what generated the audit.
I got a question. My question is for the commissioner. Are you saying to send this back to the Board of County Commissioners with this extra information, and then if nothing's overturned, then to take the steps that David's
That would be
suggesting?
my request, that you allow us to make a much better decision based on the information provided here, which we did not have last time.
Okay.
Any other comments?
I'll just say I think it makes sense if the commissioner's saying to take this back to the commission, and if the commission can look at this, and if the county commissioner thinks this is going to change what they've ruled before, then I think it makes sense to go back to the county commissioner. Now, if they don't change it, then I think we go back to what David is suggesting. Just to me, I think it makes sense to keep it here.
Yeah. The only thing that I can think of that was not presented was the definition of a museum, because at our last meeting, we discussed that this is not an authorized use of the tourist development tax. And when I spoke at that meeting, I spoke about it not being an authorized use. One of the members of the foundation actually got up and spoke and said that he didn't care whether or not this supported tourism. He just wanted it to be done to take care of our own, our military, our local. And so I think everything that's in this letter, other than now you have like the cited, ordinances and statutes, I think we've discussed all of it.
Well, it is the definition of the museum, because that was, yes, you can vote for it because it justifies a museum, and now we have a different opinion, very well documented opinion, that no, maybe you can't. So it is based on the fact that with this information, I don't believe, and obviously I'm only one of 5, but I don't believe that the other 4 would think that it would qualify as a museum based on this information, which is something we didn't have at that meeting.
Okay. Yes, sir. Councilman.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that the TDC authorize you to sign this letter and mail it to the County Commission and to the Department of Revenue.
All right. Well, we have a motion. Is there a second? Will you say it into the microphone, please? Thank you. We have a motion. Will you restate the motion, please, sir?
I move that the TDC authorize the chairman to sign the letter as presented and mail it to the Florida Department of Revenue and the County Commission.
So we have a motion from Councilman Bear, a second from Councilman Barrera. Is there any further discussion or debate?
Yeah, I have a question, or rather just a confirmation, I guess. So the allocation has not yet been funded, is that correct? And
That's correct.
What is the projected timeline to determine ownership from the city of Pensacola?
Councilman? I'd have to defer
60
to the
days at
council.
least?
There's literally,
Could it be quicker than 30 days?
I have no
Yeah.
idea.
So, my recommendation would be to, as Madam Commissioner pointed out, to give the County Commission an opportunity to reconcile the allocation with the statute. They may, in a second consideration, find that it doesn't align with the statute before we bring State Department into the conversation.
Can I speak to this one before substance?
Yes, please. Councilman.
I just want to know our statutory obligation. I mean, are we bypassing something that we're obligated to do? That's my concern here, is once we made a decision based on the statute, and then that is overridden, do we not then have an obligation even if we don't like it?
Kristen, are you still in here?
And when we bypass this obligation, are we all at risk? Because I think we all are obligated to defer to that in the statute.
Is that something we should ask Kristen?
Yeah.
Sure. Kristen?
Can I
Jennifer,
clarify
can you rephrase, or
a
can you
question?
repeat that question?
Are we, and I understand the statute very clearly, and we do have an obligation to report to the County Commission and the Department of Revenue. Do we have an obligation before or after it's funded?
That's not specified, but the TDC can request that expenditures be examined.
Does it become an expenditure before the line item is funded?
Well, using the dictionary definition, I would consider an expenditure to mean after the funds have been spent. But again, that's not really articulated in the statute.
Thank you.
But they have been committed by the county in the vote, the motion that carried.
Given the contingencies, you may be the one to ask that question too. I don't know where the money is sitting at the moment.
So at the moment, we really clearly need to determine what is the appropriate category for the expenditure. So we're still really having that conversation. So until it is spent, there is no expenditure. Therefore, there is nothing to be audited because there's no expenditure. So really, we're still essentially in more or less in a decision-making process. So part of my reason for stepping up is we do have our TDC policies and procedures. And if you'll permit me, I will read out of our policy. If that will be helpful to council, maybe that helps move this one direction or another. Entitle, or Section 6, BCC review of TDT expenditures, administrative action. If a TDT expenditure is reported by the TDC as potentially unauthorized, the BCC shall review the TDC's findings and provide the required documentation of the BCC's determination as to the allowability of such TDT expenditures, reflecting that the expenditure is for an authorized use and directly and primarily promotes tourism. If not previously reviewed by the TDC, potentially unauthorized expenditures will be referred to the TDC prior to the review by the Board of County Commissioners. In the event of an administrative oversight regarding the TDT expenditure, the BCC will administratively take all necessary steps to comply with Section 125.0104 Florida statutes, including a determination with appropriate legislative findings that the primary purpose of the TDT expenditure is to carry out specified provisions of state law and the promotion of tourism. So that is in our policy. So to correct, but ultimately to Commissioner Hoffberger's request of the TDC, that would be in line with this, in my opinion. You know, I'm just a finance director, so it doesn't matter. So, but that would be my input from our policy.
So does that, Mr. Chairman, does that mean that we are acting prematurely then, if it has not been expended? Because it sounds like it has to be expenditure.
I don't know. I think we can, because the county commission has voted in favor of funding this for construction, which I believe is an unauthorized expenditure, we can let them spend it and then try to figure out how we're going to claw that money back, the unauthorized expenditure, issue the letter and then figure out if they can actually claw it back. Or we could try to preemptively say, hey, county, we don't believe that the action you took was an authorized to commit these funds to this project for this purpose. The construction of this project is an authorized use, and we'd like you to not do that.
But the Department of Revenue wouldn't have no interest in it until the money was spent, isn't that correct?
I don't know if the Department of Revenue has any interest in it. They didn't respond last time.
Okay.
And it might be, I don't know why in the statute we're obligated to report to the Department of Revenue, other than the Department of Revenue, in the statute, it talks about the taxes are remitted to the Department of Revenue, but the county may decide to collect locally and administrate the program locally. And in that case, which you designate who, which the county has designated the clerk's office to be the recipient, to administrate the program. But that might be part of the old piece, is still reporting to the Department of Revenue because they otherwise collect the tourist development tax and remit it back to the county. They just don't in our case because we've elected to collect it locally.
So with that being said, can we make a substitute? I'd like to make a substitute motion that we send this letter to the Board of County Commissioners, that the county commissioners make every effort to get it on the next board agenda, and that we revisit this at our next meeting, especially knowing that it's not going to be funded before then because the city's not going to take ownership prior to that.
So is your proposed motion, substitute motion, is to send it unsigned?
To the county commission.
To the county
commission,
commissioners.
unsigned, not executed, but just to say, hey, here's all the stuff that we've been telling you.
With the definition, everything that you provided in here, which is great information, I appreciate it.
Yeah, no.
Again, better than Google, and that's all we had in the moment, right? So that we would provide the Board of County Commissioners this information and ask them to reconsider, and to also consider the Haas study at the same time.
Would you
Second.
So would you entertain a substitute motion, Councilman Bear?
That's a hostile motion, so no. That's not what I proposed. But you can, with the vote, you do a substitute motion if you get a vote. To take over my motion.
Say that again, I couldn't hear you.
You can do a substitute motion. It's not a friendly amendment, but if you get a vote of enough people, you can have that take the place of my motion.
Okay. So a motion on a vote on taking, I'm not a
No.
parliamentarian.
You have to vote on the substitute
Motion. Okay. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the substitute motion?
I just want to say that I agree with this motion simply because I think we ought to give them one last shot before we call a special meeting and involve the state in any manner. I don't care. If we've got a local problem, let's deal with it locally if we can. If we can't, then report them. That's my feeling.
Okay.
Yes.
Tish?
And I would think to maybe execute it. I know you said to send it unsigned. I think if we're going to send it back to Board of County Commissioners, that you would sign it as the chair.
I would agree with that. I would amend my motion. Absolutely, sign it. Let them know you're serious, 100%. Just send it to the board, not to the state.
So the substitute motion is to send it to
Sign.
the board, but not send it to the state and let them reconsider.
Correct. Yes, sir.
And that second still stands. Mr. Reeves, your second still stands. Any further discussion? All right, well, then we will call for the vote. Danielle, will you please call the roll?
James Reeves,
Yes.
Ashley Hoffberger,
Yes.
David Baer,
Yes.
Matish Patel,
Yes.
Charles Baer,
Yes.
Jennifer Breyer,
Yes.
Brad Molinex,
Yes.
and Jason Nicholson.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you very much. That concludes our business items. Are any closing remarks? Mr. Reeves?
I just would like a parliamentary inquiry. Can any member of this board call a special meeting?
I believe the chairman can. I don't know. We'll have to ask the county attorney. Kristen, you're being summoned once more.
You don't have to come up.
Yeah.
It's okay. I'm
Yeah.
just
I mean, the
asking-
question was, can any member of this board call a special, or this council call a special meeting?
I would have to go back and look at the ordinance, but it's my memory that the chair can call a special meeting. But I would have to check the ordinance.
Okay.
Well, when the chair calls a special meeting, does he have the obligation to tell what the special meeting's about?
Yes, I think when you hold
Well,
it,
your first notice just said, tell the secretary whether or not you can be there, and it didn't have any, and I would just think, whether it's a special meeting for this purpose or for whatever purpose, just a matter of courtesy, you know, you ought to give the members 2 or 3 dates. And, I mean, it's kind of, we're going to have this meeting, and we don't care whether you're there or not, as long as enough people can form a quorum. I just think it's at least courtesy to, some of us have other jobs.
well, thank you, and I'll take that under consideration. I do know that we scheduled it for a different date, and because there was a request to change it because of conflicts, we changed it. So if there is a conflict, please let staff know if you can't
So
make a meeting.
if I have a conflict, I could call you?
Don't call me, call staff. Commissioner?
That's all.
All right, thank you, Commissioner.
I just want to say I want to sit in this seat every time because it's so much more fun than sitting in that seat. But no, in all seriousness, thank you to the entire board. Thank you for giving the Board of County Commissioners an opportunity to rectify it, and with the end goal of making sure that we're spending the money correctly. So I really do appreciate all of you.
Thank you. Tish?
I just want to say thank you. Thank you, David, for staying on top of it and making sure that the use of TDT funds are spent how they're supposed to be spent, and it's, you know, according to statute. And, you know, just a little term of calling it a museum doesn't, you know, especially if it doesn't allow it. That, thank you for being on top of that.
Thank you. Councilman Bear?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just to reach out to Mr. Reeves there, I think it was the city council members that had a conflict. You know, we do meet too. We have 3:30 meetings twice a month during most months, and in the summer we don't. But the first date that was proposed was same date. I don't know how we would have gotten out of there in 30 minutes with the issues we had to discuss. So I do appreciate the rescheduling. And you know, it is interesting in council, it's pretty much, and city council is pretty much the same way the president can call a meeting. I think a group of us could get together, but we can't talk, so there's no way we could really do that anyway. But and sometimes we don't even know what the issue is going to be until later, but they give us dates, and okay, we'll try and be there. But I'm just hopeful that, you know, the resolution is that the county commission can see the error that it made in using TDC funds for this particular project for Chappie James. And you know, I would be fine either way. I'm fine with the letter going back to the county commission, but I hope that they will, you know, look at it and realize that the decision to use TDC funds was not the proper use. And hopefully it doesn't have to come back here for us to do the letter of the Department of Revenue, even though they probably won't respond to us. But, you know, so I hope that happens. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Councilman Breyer?
Thanks. I do appreciate everyone's active involvement, and I was confused over some of the complaints earlier. I, for the life of me, Mr. Reeves, never heard what you said last time that was so offensive, so just saying. But I do appreciate, I appreciate everyone's active involvement on this board.
Thank you. You can't hear him because he won't turn his microphone on. I'll come all the
Well,
way
I
down
keep
there,
doing
and I can
this
look,
so I can
everybody
s-
will be to my
I keep
left.
leaning like this so I can see y'all and
Right.
completely blocking them from everything, so, sorry.
We need a round table.
Sometimes it does come a combination of lip reading and trying to pick up things, but I want to thank everybody for their work, and Mr. Chairman, for your attention to detail, and everybody's attention to going through what's reported and going through the data and making sure everything matches up. It's good.
Thank you. Jason?
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wouldn't be doing my job as a member of the tourism industry if I didn't say that, you know, those individuals in Escambia County who work in the tourism industry love tourism. And the tourism industry is actually the largest collector of sales tax in the county, despite what the public speaker said today. It's also, accommodations providers are the largest collectors of, or remitters of ad valorem tax. So the tourism industry is in fact the #1 profit-producing industry in Escambia County. For better or worse, that's where we are. I'd conclude by saying I wish Navy Days great weather. This has got to be a home run this year. And I, for one, want to see the Chappie James Memorial standing 30 feet tall at the base of the bridge next to an F-4 Phantom. That's going to be pretty impressive. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I just want to thank council members also for being here today. We are missing. I was about to say it's not often that we have all of our members. Today is another one of those days. We don't have one of our members. But thank you. Thank you for the lively discussion. Thank you for everyone that's been here, and good luck to Navy Days as well. Thank you. With that, call the meeting adjourned.
So I don't think it was